All right, guys. So we're going to start this next chunk. This isn't a new unit. We're kind of adding this to the new nation that we talked about and the War of 1812 that we talked about yesterday. Speaking of that, I know that some of you guys had trouble with that video yesterday. There's some copyright issues with a video clip that I had shown. So I sent you guys an email with the new links in it. And I fixed all of those links on Google Classroom. So if you didn't get that yesterday, it's fairly short, but you need to go back and make sure that you get that. Okay. So this next chunk of notes that we're going to be talking about for the rest of the week and a little bit next week, we'll be talking about, it's called Westward Expansion. And so if you're looking at a map of the United States, at this point in time, the United States is from, if you're talking about just the states, you've got like Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, Ohio, and then you're up in here into New England, so Pennsylvania, New York, some of the smaller ones, and now Maine is a new state as well. Maine originally was a part of Massachusetts. So anyways, and then here are some territories, which means that they're in the process of becoming states, but they're not states yet. Okay, so in our visual vocab, there was this thing called the Louisiana Purchase, which was this chunk of land right here, which we bought from France. So this is the time period that like Napoleon is doing his whole like war thing, and they needed money, and so they sold us this giant chunk of land right here, and with that, people are going to start to move in that direction to like fill up that land. Okay. And then eventually there's going to be some other things, and we're going to end up getting some of this other land over here that is controlled by Spain and then eventually Mexico. But anyways, so when I'm saying westward expansion, I mean like this right here was originally the United States, and now we're getting this chunk, and then we're going to get this chunk, okay? And you'll see a map that kind of like shows that a little bit better in just a little bit, but that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying like westward expansion, okay? So the first question is like, why do people want to move west? And there's a couple different factors that happen over several decades, and so it depends on like when we're talking about why people are moving, but that's basically what we're going to talk about today, okay? So at this time period, so think of America in like the 1860s. This is kind of where we're at. There's no major railroads that go west, okay? So what that means is you either have to like go by land, like on your feet, like in a wagon, whatever, from wherever you are on the East Coast all the way to the West, which took a really long time, 2 to 3 months. Very dangerous because there's a lot of Native Americans living in this area that don't want people from the East Coast moving out there, or you could go by boat. At this time, to go by boat, you would have to leave over here and you have to go all the way around South America, all the way to California, and then you'd still have to go by land, like inward, okay? And that could take anywhere from 4 to 6 months, depending on like what time of year you're going, because this gets frozen up at certain times of year, okay? So that's kind of where they're at. So it's a long journey, it's a tough journey, but there's going to be some things that are going to still encourage people. Those are what we call push factors, pull factors that are making people want to move west, and we're going to see what some of those are, okay? All right, here are what I would call like the 5 main factors of why people want to move west, okay? We're going to talk about each one of these individually. So for now, I just want you to write them down, and we're like each of these are going to get their own slide, okay? So the first one is manifest destiny. That's an idea, it's a concept. We'll talk about it in the next slide. Gold is discovered in California, so that's something that we're going to talk about. The Homestead Act, that is a piece of legislation. We'll talk about that. Transcontinental Railroad is being built. That's a railroad that like connects all the way across the United States, even what isn't the United States right now, but will be in by the time we finish the slideshow. And then this idea of the American dream, okay? So like I said, we're going to talk about each of those. So let's start with this idea of manifest destiny, okay? So if someone says like it's your destiny, that means that it is something that in the future you are meant to accomplish this thing. And so there's this idea that the West, which we talked about just a second ago, was this great untapped frontier, meaning that it was just this land of opportunity. There's all these resources and no one's taking advantage of it. Okay, that's the first lie. Like, there are people that are living out there, the Native Americans. They have been pushed from where they were and they've been pushed out to the plains, and they are living out there. So it's not like there's no one out there. Like, there are people out there. Okay, but this idea that white Americans are not taking advantage of the benefits and the resources that are out there, okay? And so this idea of manifest destiny just is this idea or this belief that it's America's mission to expand from one ocean to the other ocean, okay? So if we're looking back at our map, from this ocean, this is the Atlantic Ocean, to this ocean, which is the Pacific Ocean. So from sea to shining sea, okay? That it is the destiny of America to do that, okay? And to be clear, there are a lot of obstacles, including like people that live there. Okay, so that's going to make it complicated. And not just we're supposed to like spread, but we're supposed to take democracy and freedom with us. So it was a very positive idea that like God had ordained this or God had planned this to unify the nation and to spread democracy and freedom and Christianity and all of that stuff from ocean to ocean. That was kind of this idea of manifest destiny, okay? All right, this is a really important painting that personifies or like is an example of manifest destiny. And if you guys notice, if you look at it, and I want you guys to pay attention because I'm going to ask you to analyze this painting later. So we're going to do some of that work now. So remember, if you look at it, you will notice that over here, the picture is nice and light. Light means good. Over here, it's nice and dark, which means that it's not good. Okay, and so what you're going to see is this lady represents justice and liberty. Okay, so this is a book of the law, and she is bringing with her light. So as she moves across the painting, light is coming with her. And if you look down here, you see these are the Native Americans that are being like run off. The darkness is being pushed away. And with this lady is not only coming democracy and freedom, but it's civilization is coming. So if you look at this picture, you'll see over here, we've got like a train. And this is, she's actually holding in her hand, this is a telegram wire. And a telegram or a telegraph wire is just a way that you can send information. Think of it kind of like a text message, but it goes through like the phone line, okay? So like communication. And so if you're looking, like you're kind of comparing this side, these people are on foot or they're on horseback. And so these folks are moving by stagecoach or carriage or by railroad. And so we see like this kind of technological advancement. So the technology is getting better. Communication is getting better. It's getting lighter. So this is seen as something very positive. But you guys have to remember like whose perspective this is. So for the Native Americans, which we'll talk more about on Thursday, this was not a positive thing for them. This actually destroys their culture and destroys a lot of their lives, okay? And so it's really, really destructive to the Native Americans. But from the perspective of a lot of the white Americans that are moving west and even some African Americans that are moving west, this is a huge opportunity that America is going to do, okay? So that's kind of this painting. You guys will see it again later. So this is an important painting. Make sure you got that. Okay, so next, let's look at this map. You don't have to write anything down for this, okay? So if you look at this map, it's going to show how America expands. So this is where we're starting. This is America. Louisiana Purchase is just bought. We're getting the Oregon country area. Then we get Texas, and then this is called the Mexican Cession. Basically, we're stealing slash buying slash stealing some of this area from Mexico, and then it shows that land moving from territory, from like unorganized territory to organized territory to state, which is what we have today. We have everything is kind of organized, okay? And you see that kind of slowly happens, all right? Also, at the same time, the Civil War is kind of taking place. We're not going to talk about that until the next unit because it's too confusing to talk about these two things at one time. It's called layers of history. Basically, like there's two things going on at the same time, and if we looked at both of them at the same time, it would be really complicated and mixed up. But if you pull them apart and you just look at one and then you look at the other, it makes more sense. So right now we're looking at Westward Expansion. Next unit, we'll talk about the Civil War. So anyways, this is kind of the growth of the United States. All right. Again, this is another picture. When we started, it's this, just the screen part. And then we're going to get the Louisiana Purchase. And then we are going to annex Texas, and we'll talk more about that later, and Spain. Not Spain, that's Florida, from Spain. And then Oregon Territory, and then the Mexican Cession, and then the Gadsden Purchase. So anyways, it's just kind of a little chunk by chunk by chunk, okay? All right, so let's look back. We already talked about Manifest Destiny. That's this idea of why people move west. Let's talk about the first like real life event that happens. Okay, so 1848, 1849. The gold rush in California. So gold is going to be discovered in California, and overnight, like thousands of Americans are going to head west at this idea that they can become rich very, very quickly. Okay. They can become instant millionaires. And for some people that happens. For most people, it doesn't happen. But basically it's just the West is this place where you can go and you can start again. You have the opportunity to become very, very rich and very wealthy very quickly. And you just don't have those opportunities in the East, okay? And so we're going to see that this is kind of pushing a lot of Americans to move out west. And we're going to see a lot of the people that end up moving out west, they don't actually find gold, but they end up staying there for other reasons, okay? And so if you guys have ever heard of the team, the 49ers, this is why they're called the 49ers, because in 1849, 1848, this is when the gold rush like came. And this is when California became just almost overnight exploded with like American citizens there. So yeah. At the time, it was originally a part of Mexico, which was a part of Spain. But by this point, like, we'll talk more about this later, but we end up like buying it, but also kind of stealing it. Okay. So anyways, that's where we're at with Gold Rush. Okay. So, slightly after the Gold Rush, okay, there's going to be this thing called the Homestead Act. And basically this is the government's way of saying, like, you remember that Louisiana Purchase? Let me go back. That's this chunk of land right here. So we bought this land, and now the U.S. government wants people to move into that land, okay? And so the way that they're going to encourage people to move into that land is they're going to give it away, okay? So basically what they do is they say, you can have 60 acres, 50 acres, it depends on the area, if you promise to live there for 5 years. If you promise to live there for 5 years, then that land is yours. And so you've got a lot of poor farmers that are living on the East Coast that are like, I don't have that much land. So that is something that's going to encourage them to do that. Okay, pause. Sorry, I knew when I said that was not right. 160 acres, not 50, not 60, 160 acres. And it is going to be different in some areas. Like some areas it's 150, some it's 160, but in general, 160 is what we're going to stick with. So basically, like millions of acres total are going to be given away for free. The only thing is you just have to pinky promise that you will live there for 5 years. And after you have lived there for 5 years, they give you the deed, which is like a piece of paper that says like this land belongs to you, and it's all yours. You don't have to pay for it. And so you've got people that are living on the East Coast that they don't have land. They're poor. And if you're a farmer, you have to have land. There's no other way for you to make money if you don't have like somewhere to grow things. Okay. And so that is going to encourage a ton of people to move west to claim that free land. Okay. Keep in mind, there were people living there. Okay, so Native Americans have been living on that land, specifically nomadic tribes. Those are tribes that move around, and we'll talk more about that on Thursday. But that is going to cause a lot of tension. Okay, so anyways, that's a big thing. Okay, so lots of those folks are moving west for either gold or they're moving west for this free land, and so the government gets this idea that, hey, what if we make it easier for people to move west? Because the government wants people to move and to occupy this land, okay? So next comes the Transcontinental Railroad, which the word transcontinental, trans means across, the continent, okay? So we will see right here. There were already some railroads that connected to like this part from different parts over here. But this is a transcontinental railroad, what's being built right here. Okay. So it's basically just completing the line that you could go from one side of the country to the other side of the country using the railroad. Okay. Now we'll go back to the notes. So don't let that term like throw you off. Trans means across, the continent, which means like North America, that chunk of the United States, and then it's a railroad. Okay, so there's a couple of things that make this possible. So one of those things is the way that steel is made. So that's what the rails are made out of. It changes. So it's actually called the Bessemer process. Carnegie stole/figured it out. Mainly he stole it. But there's a lot of stealing in U.S. history, so just get used to it. But what it's going to do, it makes it quicker and it makes it cheaper to produce steel. And so as a result, it's not as expensive to build these railroads. And so now they're like, oh, we want lots of people to move west, so let's make it easier, okay? And so the first Transcontinental Railroad is going to be started in 1869. And basically what happens is you've got like private companies that like random people own, that work with the government, and the government is giving away land and paying those like individual companies to build those railroads, or will give them super good loans with really low interest rates to make it easier for them to make more money. And so the people that are actually building these railroads, like those companies, they are going to make bank off of this, okay? Like a lot of money. Okay, so this is a good deal for the government because the government is getting the railroad built, which is encouraging people to move west. But it's also a great deal for these companies that are making this. Not a great deal for Native Americans. Again, we'll talk about this on Thursday. Okay, and it ran from California to Nebraska. And remember, if we look at this little map right here, there are, like I said, there are railroads that are coming from different parts that start here. And so you're actually going to have 3 different companies that build this. So basically one starts over here. This is the Union Pacific Railroad, and it starts here and it builds this way. And then you've got the Central Pacific. So it starts in Sacramento, California, and it goes this way. And this one part right here looks a lot shorter, but you have to understand that there are some huge mountains in this area. So this part right here, even though it's shorter, was a much more difficult build because they had to go through the Rockies, okay? And we'll look at some of that. Here are some pictures of these railroads coming by. And basically what would happen is the guys that were building these railroads, they would move their camps like as they went. So they would like lay a couple miles and then they would move on, and they would just like live with this company for years until they built it, okay? And they had to do like specifically the California, like moving towards through Utah, they had some really complicated things that they had to figure out, like going across very like deep ravines or going through mountains, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But anyways, yeah, so that's where we're at. So we're going to stop our notes right there. And then on Thursday, we're going to talk about the impact that this had on Native Americans. And we'll probably go back a little bit. On Friday, you're going to see Part of America, the Story of Us. And it's going to put all this together, okay? So there's that. All right, so I am going to really quickly give you guys kind of a lowdown on the assignment that you're going to be doing. Okay, so if you go to Google Classroom, this will like show up tomorrow. This is the Manifest Destiny map and questions, and this is what it looks like, okay? So you are not doing all of this today, okay? You're only going to do part of it. And if you look at the instructions, I tell you what part I want you to do on Tuesday and then what part I want you to do on Thursday. So on Tuesday, you're going to do the Manifest Destiny question at the top and documents 2, 3, and 4, okay? Documents 2, 3, and 4. So if we look at this, this is a Manifest Destiny question at the top. Basically, it's just asking you to define it. You're going to use your notes to do that. So this one right here, you do this, and then you're going to skip document 1 for now. Don't mark it out because you're still going to need to do it. You're going to do document 2, document 3, and document 4, okay? And then on Thursday, you're going to finish this up, okay? So again, what I would like for you to do today is like explain what the term Manifest Destiny means. You can get that from your notes. And then you do document 2, so you just read this and you answer these 2 questions. Document 3, you look at this cartoon, you read this, you answer these 2 questions. And document 4. This is a QR code reader, so if you like hover your phone over that, like with your camera up, it will pull up a color like picture of this, and it's easier to see because this is kind of hard to see right here. So that's something that you can do as well. If not, then if you don't have that access, you can just zoom in. So like right here. And then you can read a lot more of what it says. You might not be able to read that part right there, but you can read the rest of this part, okay? And then the rest of the stuff you're going to do on Thursday, okay? All right, that is where we're going to stop. Thanks, guys.